Well, a couple things. Number one, the scare, and I hear what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. I see those comments similar to that.
Jim Rickards begins by addressing the prevalent fear surrounding Trump's presidency, arguing that despite criticisms, Trump was the first president in recent history not to initiate a war. He contrasts Trump's record with past administrations, highlighting instances of U.S. military intervention under previous presidents, including Obama and Bush. Rickards emphasizes Trump's efforts towards dialogue with geopolitical adversaries like Kim Jong-un and Putin, suggesting potential alliances between the U.S. and Russia against China. He frames international relations as a three-handed poker game, with China, Russia, and the U.S. as the main players. Critiquing current U.S. foreign policy elites, Rickards laments the absence of figures like Kissinger and Nixon who understood the strategic importance of alliances. He argues for a shift in U.S. policy towards cooperation with Russia to counterbalance China's influence. Regarding Ukraine, Rickards provides a nuanced analysis suggesting that U.S. provocations contributed to the current conflict. He criticizes the mainstream media's portrayal of the situation and urges viewers to seek alternative sources for accurate information.
All along, but anyone can have their own narrative or their own spin, but there's something called reality, and it's worth checking in every now and then. Trump was the first president since, I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure how far back you have to go, maybe Gerald Ford, who didn't start a war. There were no wars. The Ukraine war was under Biden. Obama, we burned down Libya. Gaddafi got a bullet in the eye and worse, so I'll leave out the details. Under George Bush, Saddam was hanged by the neck. We invaded Iraq in 2003. I love those people. Russia goes into Ukraine. You're violating sovereign territory. What do you think the U.S. did in 2003? I mean, I'm not... Russia-Ukraine discussion, that's another 2-hour interview, but my point is the U.S., so when we invade people, it's okay, but if somebody else does, you're violating international law, etc. And Bill Clinton bombed Serbia, and George H.W. Bush, I believe, we invaded Panama, and so on. And so, in Reagan, we had the Contras, and you just keep going back. So Trump was the only president who did not start a war. So all the stuff about he's scary, he's dangerous. I look at their track record. He's the guy who flew to the demilitarized zone and met with Kim Jong-un. Now, whatever you think of Kim Jong-un, and Trump's a publicity hound, I'll grant that, he's a showman, but he did it, and they shook hands, and they had a long meeting. So Trump had a good dialogue with Putin. I mean, I can't think of a better natural alliance than the United States and Russia, versus China, which is the main enemy, but somehow U.S. policy elites who don't know anything, they're worse than economists when it comes to that, have singled out Russia as the main enemy. Russia's not the main enemy. Russia and the United States would be very good natural allies vis-a-vis China. Shay, I'm going to guess that you're a pretty good poker player. So just a guess. But there's an old saying in poker: if you're in a three-handed game and you don't know who the sucker is, you're the sucker.
Yes.
It's always two. It's always two against one. Two players, combine forces to clean out the other guy, and then they turn on each other. But we have a three-handed poker game. There are only three countries that really matter in the world: China, Russia, and the United States. You've got lots of allies, lots of important economies. I love Australia. Can't wait to get back. But it's really Russia, China, and the United States. It's a three-handed poker game. But right now, the U.S. is the sucker. It's Russia and China versus the United States. And people like Kissinger, which means we lose. People like Kissinger understood. See, what Kissinger and Nixon did, they cozied up to China to isolate the Soviet Union. And it worked. Soviet Union collapsed. Communism's gone. Here comes Putin, etc. But now it's time for the U.S. and Russia to join hands to isolate China. That's how you win the game. But the U.S. foreign policy elites, I've never seen a sorrier bunch. I mean, I look back. I mean, in addition to having lived through a lot of this, I'm a graduate degree in international relations. I was an American foreign policy major. I look at Dean Acheson, John Foster Dulles, Dean Rusk, James Baker, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz. Where are they? where are the giants of, or we go back even further, where are the giants of American foreign policy? We got Jake Sullivan, who's basically a campaign manager, a political hack. We got Tony Blinken, who's a lightweight. Cookies Newland just left. They called her Cookies Newland because she was the primary sponsor of the war in Ukraine and led the 2014 coup, where we, MI6 and CIA, overthrew a duly elected leader of Ukraine. Yes, he was pro-Russian. I'll allow for some corruption, but he was elected in a fair election, and the U.S. overthrew him with the neo-Nazi snipers in Maidan Square shooting innocent civilians, and Victoria Nuland's going out in the daylight handing out cookies and sandwiches to the protesters. But it was a cynical, ruthless. And Trump got impeached for a phone call to Zelensky. I mean, the warmongers today, Biden, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, all of them, they're flying to Kiev. They're hugging Zelensky. I don't know if he ever changes his T-shirt. I mean, hopefully for their sake. But Trump, who never went to Kiev, got impeached for a phone call, all because he put some reservations around further aid, consistent with what I was saying before. So here we are in a major war in Ukraine, losing badly. That's the other thing you won't get from, well, certainly the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Financial Times, The Economist are basically all lies. If you want good information, you need to develop your sources, read some of the Italian and German newspapers. Russian sources are actually pretty reliable, but there are independent commentators out there. You have to find them. You can, but Ukraine is losing badly. They'll be out of ammunition by the end of June. The reason we're sending cluster bombs is because, which mainly kill children, is because we're out of 155 millimeter shells. The thing is that the Newland warmonger Tony Blinken take on Ukraine was we're gonna poke a stick in the eye and keep poking until they invade. So yeah, Russia invaded, but we provoked them for 14 years, from starting in 2008 when Bush said Ukraine and Georgia should join NATO, and then 4 months later Putin invaded Georgia. Like there's a little clue there. And then in 2014 they did the coup and Putin invaded Crimea. So it's like, how many invasions do you need before you take the man seriously? But we kept poking and poking and poking. Putin doesn't bluff, by the way. I said you have to understand Jay Powell to understand the Fed. You have to understand Putin. He does not bluff. And so if he says I'm going to do it, he does it. So anyway, we're losing that war badly. But so I don't get the Trump paranoia thing. I'd be far more concerned about Biden, who's been wrong about everything for 40 years. So now, there's no more dangerous occupation than predicting politics. Everyone who does it, and I do it, will tell you, there's a cliche. I don't like cliches, but some of them are true. A week is a lifetime in politics, and that's true. We're going to get a ruling in this Georgia RICO case against Trump probably tomorrow. That could turn things upside down.